Hey everybody, this is Repeat Ron, and today we're going to be taking a look at some more Puzzles and Dragons monsters. This is going to be the first video in this series of looking at leaders in Puzzles and Dragons, looking at their strengths, their weaknesses, and just kind of what categories they fall in from easiest to hardest to use, based on skill, of course. So we're going to start off with the very easiest leads. These ones I like to call the straight buff leads. These leads are generally pretty forgiving, and they work out quite well in the early to mid game. When you're looking at a straight buff lead, essentially what you're looking at is just something that gives you straight buffs with no drawbacks or little to no drawbacks. Today we're going to be looking at the very basic ones that just give buffs, no debuffs, no circumstances beyond what they clearly state. So the straight buff team leaders generally just give a flat out buff and nothing really else. They could be something like 3 times attack for devils, 3 times attack healers, 2 times HP for attackers, who knows, just something simple that's easy to understand for beginners and anybody else who hasn't even played the game. So the first thing that you want to do if you're looking for a straight buff lead is simply look at their skill and see how easy it is to understand. Usually the simpler the better. So long as it just gives you some kind of buff, it will probably help you out. And there will be a list of notable easy leaders towards the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. So the first thing that you should know about these teams is that you want to build a team completely revolving around the leader's leader skill. This is generally pretty simple. First example would be attack and HP for devils. Then you should build your entire team out of devils. You shouldn't have anything that isn't devils, unless it's simply too good to pass up. The second example would be something like giving HP and RCV to fire. Then you should build a team primarily out of fire attributes and not the secondary. However, if the secondary attribute is fire and the monster that you're considering is good, then maybe you should put that on the team as well. The simple reason for that is that whichever element is their primary, they will do more damage with. However, if they are double element, then their damage is split 2/3 to whatever their primary attribute is. So say it's fire and fire, then it does 2/3 damage and 1/3 damage fire both ways. If it is only fire, then it will do all damage just through fire. And then same with if, say it was fire and wood, then it would do 2/3 damage fire and 1/3 damage wood. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. And the third example here is more optional than anything, and that is try to build a team focusing around one color, even if the team does not focus on a color by the leader skill. So if the leader skill says it gives attack and HP to devils, well then you can really put whatever devil you want, but if they happen to be all dark, you'll likely have a little bit more of an easy time, just because you won't be trying to hit all elements, you'll just be trying to hit that one element, making it a little bit simpler for you. However, this really isn't necessary the more you play, and if you start getting good stuff, then you could just switch it out. The second thing that you should know about the straight buff leads is that they tend to be a little bit on the lacking side of damage. So this may require you to put in a sub that gives a buff, or a sub that gives a debuff to the enemies, or gives you more defense, something that can kind of compensate for their generally lower damage than, say, something like a rainbow or a combo team, which we'll get to way later in this series. Those are going to be much higher up on the list. So now we're going to get to the 10 notable easy leaders, and these are all 10 simple leaders. Take into consideration that none of these leaders are considered to be the best leaders, but they are all reasonable leaders that you can get and can use throughout the early and intermediate levels of the game. Not so much towards the later game, though. The first leader we have is Guardian of the Sacred City, Athena. Athena is pretty straightforward. 1.2 times HP and 3 times attack for gods. So if your team is primarily made of gods, they'll get bonus attack and HP. You could also try making them more light or wood, depending on what helps you more, simply because those are her elements and it might help out the team more. Second lead is King of Hell, Satan. Satan gives 1.35 times HP and 3.5 times attack for devils. he's pretty straightforward, giving attack and HP for devils. The third lead we have on here is Divine Law Goddess Valkyrie Rose. She gives 3 times attack for healers and gods, so you can make your team out of healers and gods. This does give you a little bit more flexibility than some of the other leads do, simply because it allows you to use anything that is considered a god or a healer. The fourth leader we have on here is Awoken Dancing Queen Hera, or Hera, or however you wish to pronounce it, giving 1.2 times HP, 3 times attack, and 1.2 times RCV to devils, meaning that she just gives straight overall buffs to devils. This is one that we haven't seen so far on the list, giving HP, attack, and RCV overall to everything that is a devil, which is quite nice. The fifth leader we have on here is Reincarnated Ancient Dragon Knight Zeal. His leader skill is 3.5 times attack for dragons, just giving a huge damage buff to dragons. This is a little bit more uncommon than some of the others. I found a lot of the other ones that I was looking at throughout here generally were for gods and devils or for certain elements, and seeing dragons was kind of nice. The sixth leader we have here is Reincarnated Torrential Fenrir Knight Kanami, or Kunami, I'm not sure how to say his name. He has 3.5 times attack for balanced. Similar to Zeal, he just gives straight attack buff to balanced, which we haven't really seen yet, which is, again, kind of nice to see. The seventh leader we have on here is Crazed King of Purgatory Beelzebub. He simply gives 2 times HP and 2 times attack for devils. The eighth leader we have on here is White Rainbow Arc Noah, giving 2.5 times HP, 1.5 times attack, 1.5 times RCV to gods. Again, another leader that we see giving buffs to the 3 major stats. The ninth leader we have here is the ninjas, and when I say leader, I'm actually combining multiple leads into one category, being all the ninjas, since they don't exactly give the same buffs to whichever category they're buffing as some of the other ones do. But they are all very simple, just generally giving attack, RCV, and HP to whatever it may be, whether it be devils, physicals, balanced, etc. And then the 10th notable, easy to use leader is quite simply the starters. The starters give 1.5 times RCV to dragons, and then 3 times attack to fire, water, or wood, making them pretty simple. If you have a team of either fire, water, or wood dragons, then they'll be getting the most buff. But if you simply have fire, water, or wood, that will work to just give bonus damage. So now we're going to go over the pros and the cons of these teams. Pros of the simple to use teams are that, first off, they're very simple to use. They don't require very much skill to use. Simply hit orbs that you want to deal damage with. The second is, again, that they are very simple. They're easy to understand. You can look at something and completely understand what it is, and just look inside of your box for subs that you could throw on the team to help you out. Third pro is that they're usually pretty forgiving on subs. As you've seen, they're fairly vague on what they require. They could be something like dragons, something like fire, something like water, and that's all it requires. So sub pools are generally pretty large for these and accessible to everybody, whether they've gotten good things from the rare egg machine or have just got skunked on it and ended up getting nothing. The fourth pro is that they are good for the beginning and the intermediate parts of the game. They do fall off quite a bit towards the late game and even into the mid game or intermediate game, whatever you want to say. They kind of tend to fall out of favor compared to other leads that generally just do more than them. But for the early levels and plenty of the medium levels, as well as various descended dungeons, they can do them quite well without too much difficulty. And then the fifth pro to them is that they are very good for beginners. If you just started playing the game and aren't really sure how to use a certain lead or how to use a certain friend's lead that they say works well with yours, these ones are very simple, so you can really focus more around the simplicity and just understanding what they do. Now the cons. The cons are that they tend to do less damage than other teams. This is kind of unavoidable simply because their skill is so basic and so forgiving that it has to be balanced in one way or another. And generally, loss and damage is how it's balanced. The next con is that they tend to struggle in dungeons that punish that type or element, which can be somewhat prevalent in descended dungeons. Now, you could just switch your team to be one of these other teams. Say if you had a fire team, but you also had a water team, simply switch it to water because the dungeon isn't giving you water, or it's hurting devils, or something like that, to where it'll be much more forgiving on that element. And this can be a con, but if you know what you're doing, or if you have a basic understanding of how to do dungeons, then you probably won't have too much problem here. And then the third and final con is that they fall off quite hard towards the late game. Most of the leaders that I said on here aren't going to be seen into the late game. Once you get past the normal dungeons and into the higher level technical dungeons, or most of the descended dungeons, these teams will struggle more than other teams, which is somewhat of a problem. But overall, I do believe that these leads are the easiest to use leads out of all leads in the game. You may be asking, why didn't I put on other simple to use leads that may have drawbacks or may have additional pluses? Well, that's going to be for the next video in this series, talking about straight buffs, but with something tacked on. So look forward to that video whenever the heck I get around to it. Until then, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it helped you out in some way or another. So if you guys have been having a good day, keep on having a good day. If you guys have been having a bad day, I hope this video made your day just a little bit better. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, stay cool and bye.